Hello everybody. I'm standing in the park outside of Duke's grandma's house. This is one of the next attempts of trying to do this video. Basically I am going through so much emotional pain right now that I feel like a desperate need to scream to the world, and in that way is why I'm making this video, to just try to release this feeling. This is one of the hardest times of my life, and my father saved my life twice. First by adopting me, and then later in life when some very serious things happened. He was my whole world, and I felt like I would not be able to go on without him, just because I loved my dad so much. My dad was diagnosed with cancer, and it metastasized, and we tried the treatments and everything. Immunotherapy worked for a while, but eventually it stopped working and things just progressively fell apart. The point is, we knew he was sick, and it was a long process. There was all this time to make peace and share the final times with him. What has happened here is so much, in a way, harder, because this all happened very suddenly. And I'm going to tell you guys now what happened here. Why? What just happened here? Okay. So, Duke has always had trouble with his breathing. He's an English bulldog, and a super duper English bulldog. And the breathing problems were real. Every year when the summer would come, I'd have to go through a couple weeks of getting him to get his wind up and go on longer and longer walks, and eventually he would be able to sustain the walks, and he'd be okay. Now, this summer was worse than the others, and he never really was able to get there. Week after week passed, and he just never was able to break through that and handle any kind of long walks, which was worrying. And so you guys know how much he loved people, and he loved everything, and he loved to be out and about. And let me tell you guys, so many times he never wanted to come back in from walks. He wanted to be out all day. You understand that? So contrast it with the past few months. Anytime I'd take out the leash, Duke would run away. So unlike him. And something else that has been going on that I didn't mention, because I didn't want to worry anyone, and in talking to some people, I kind of came to understand it was something typical of bulldogs. He was suddenly petrified of the surrounding areas, the bushes and everything that he'd seen a million times. Every day we'd go for a walk. All of a sudden he was totally petrified, as if some kind of evil thing was lurking in there, and there was no way to get him to not be afraid. I would stand in the bushes. Duke was always very willful and had to be his way, and I loved him for that. I just tried so hard to get him to see that everything was okay, but it just didn't matter. And so he has become like he'd want to walk in the middle of the street, and he just never stopped. He was always scared all of a sudden, and that had been going on. The same thing with the breathing problems that seemed to have worsened. So For those reasons, and the fact that I wanted to get him refill on some stuff for allergies, and he used to get a lot of gook on his eyes, and just over-the-counter eye drops helped it, but they weren't working anymore, and he was getting a lot of buildup. So I just thought it would be great to get him checked out. So we saw a new vet yesterday, and honestly, it went great. He had a great report. They admitted, yes, the eye thing was bad. They gave us a strong medication and everything else. Any of the medications that they gave us, we never got to give it to him. Not like that had no bearing on any of this. It wasn't any kind of an emergency stuff. What they did give him was an anti-allergy injection, but that had no effect on anything, on this what happened. So everything seemed fine, and we left the vet, and Duke was hyperventilating when we left and got in the car. This was very much in tune with how he always is when we've been walking lately. The past few months, he gets out of breath, hyperventilates, he gets home, and he cools down. And that's what was going on in the car on the way back. Full blast, air conditioning, water. He seemed bad, but a couple weeks ago, we had a historic storm here in New York. That was the worst that I'd ever seen Duke. And in that situation, he needed to use the bathroom, but the storm was so horrible and raging that he would go out, go under the awning, try to go into the grassy area, immediately run back to the shelter, but he had to go. So we'd go into the building, and he'd then want to go back out, and he just kept going in and out. And so he had gotten so worked up, and I had tried so hard to convince him, baby, it's okay, just go on the floor, it doesn't matter, I'll clean it up, don't worry. But he didn't understand. I tried laying down newspapers all over the place, he didn't understand. And so he just was very stuck trying to go like properly, but not being able to because of the storm. Eventually we got into the basement. I thought maybe that would do something. The situation had gotten so bad that really his tongue even started to look like it was turning purple, which was a detail that kept coming up while he was in the ER here. Now, he eventually did go in the basement, and he came upstairs, and that was the worst that I ever saw him. But he got himself back to normal on his own, fine. Now, on the way back from the vet today, he was nowhere near that bad. He was bad, but he was nowhere near that bad. So, I came home, I had to go to a job, okay, and just like every other day, 100 million times with Duke, he would just calm down. He'd lay down on the tiles that are cold in the bathroom, and drinking his water, and this, I swear to you guys, that's 100% how things always went. So everything seemed normal. So I went to my job, and when I came home, he had gotten 10 times worse. He could barely breathe. He was coughing up foam. He couldn't really drink. There was nothing we could do to get him to calm down. In lieu of how upset going out made him, I was afraid that he would be even worse just trying to get him outside. But it became very obvious very fast that he needed help. So, despite everything, I took him. My mother was with me. We took him into the car. I tried I tried so hard to find the right people to talk to. It was a mess trying to get this information online. I called various places. A lot of places didn't even answer. A lot of places were closed. You try to find out if there's an ambulance for dogs. A bunch of places said there wasn't. This is New York City, by the way. And then the one who did say there was a service says it wasn't an emergency service. Because I just thought maybe to get him some oxygen. I called the vet we used to see, who's extremely close, 2 minutes away, and he told me adamantly, get him to an emergency room because that's what he needs. No vet office really was going to have the tools to help him. Like he himself didn't have oxygen and everything else. Now, I could only find 2 emergency room places, okay? And with school having restarted here in New York City, the traffic had been insane the past few days, just totally horrendous. I mean, a 15-minute drive to a different job a few days ago took over an hour and a half. It was been that bad, and this is all happening early afternoon, like right when school gets out. So you can imagine, the nearest emergency room would not answer the phone. That was 20 minutes away with the traffic. They would not answer the phone. In fact, their phone is answered by an automated service, and then you press 1. Okay, I just kept, and they just never, and nobody ever answered that. Before I even got a hold of them, though, I was on the phone with the other place, which was much further away, 40 minutes away, with the traffic. But they were insanely helpful, and they understood everything. So the idea would be that they were prepared for us, and there was nowhere else to take him. So, guys, I'm telling you, the fact that we survived that drive, I drove like a man with a death wish. I'm telling you guys, I've been made fun of by my friends for driving like a grandmother. I drove the top speed through traffic, weaving in and out. And God, he was in such horrible shape. He was hyperventilating. There was nothing we could do to calm him down. We couldn't give him water. We couldn't do anything. Excuse me. When we got closer to the place, I thought, we're here, it's gonna be okay. They're gonna get him. We pull up. They grab him and they carry him in. I began immediately crying my eyes out, screaming at the top of my lungs. I mean, I was done. So I run in, and they're going to work on him, trying to get a catheter. They couldn't find a vein to start giving him fluids. I told them in the past we've had this problem, so they always go intramuscular. They didn't want to do that. I knew something wasn't good because every time I was watching them, I was standing feet away from this. Every time I watched them, they were shaking their heads at each other, like looking at each other. The nurses and the doctors kept looking at each other in the eyes, shaking their head, and you know that's not good. The head doctor came over and started telling us what was going on, and at that point, I still thought everything was going to be okay. She explained to us that this was because Duke is a bulldog and they have breathing problems, and that basically at the end of the day, that is kind of what this was all about. He had been breathing so heavily, maybe he had, and maybe also because of how bad things have been lately with it, you know, he's been beaten down by it all, and she just kept saying that this is the breed, and I love that breed. And she explained that he might have gotten some kind of acid in his lungs, and at some point they were going to do x-rays and stuff, although that never got to happen. They were having a lot of trouble, and out of nowhere they just came up to us and said his heart had stopped. And I'm so sorry, she said. So they needed permission to do CPRs, of course. So they did, and you could hear them counting down. I didn't know what it meant, but they kept going and trying and trying. And then she came back over, and she basically told us that it was over, right? Not my Duke. Not my Duke. Because when she went back to tell them it's over, they gave her a surprise and said, he's not done. He's not done yet. Because he got his heartbeat back a little bit. And I didn't find out until when they called me at 4 a.m. to tell me it was over, but he was dead for a long time. At that point. But he did come back. They had gotten a catheter meant for kittens, which she kept telling me is very bad because it's so tiny and it's not doing what they need. He needed a proper ventilator that they didn't have, but that he wouldn't have survived trying to get someplace. The minute that we tried to take him, they said he would die. So there was another scare, and he fought back from that one too. And the way that things were left was we had to give time for them to work and for the medicines to kick in and everything. And at that point he had a chance, although they didn't think it was going to work out. She even said, even if we got him to the place with the real proper ventilator, he wasn't probably going to make it. I got the call at 4 o'clock that he could not wake up on his own, and basically what did it for me was she said that Duke had basically gotten to a vegetative state, so to speak, and that was all I had to hear because I love him too much. I love him too much. So we got up there, and I said goodbye, and I screamed, and I cried, and I screamed, and I hugged him, and I hugged him, and part of me died too. And then, when they told me it was time, I came in and I took his hand, and I promised him we'd meet again. And they promised me he felt no pain, he didn't suffer. And he passed away. Thank you all for being our friend. And I thank you all for everything. And I won't forget you guys. And I hope you guys never forget the Duke. Thank you.